There is 10 minutes.
Thank you, Alaska Corla. I'm glad to have the opportunity to speak on this very important issue, even though it will be only for 10 minutes. I can assure you that I could extend for much longer than that, but that will be for another day. I took more than a passing interest in the situation prior to, or the situation that caused this inquiry, because I was for many years a member of the Public Accounts Committee, and I watched with some interest the proceedings there. And I also watched the proceedings in the House, which to me, at this stage, and incidentally at the outset I want to compliment Charleton for identifying Sergeant McCabe as being an innocent victim of circumstances over which he had no control. I think that's as it should be. However, many other people have something to answer for at this stage. Government and opposition have to be responsible at all times. Wherever they may find themselves, they must at all times be responsible. And I remember on one occasion watching the proceedings of the Public Accounts Committee, where it was clear to me that there was interaction between some of the witnesses and some of the questioners. And that's totally out of order. On two grounds. First of all, the issues being discussed insofar as the Commissioner of the Gardaí, Noreen O'Sullivan, was concerned was she was subjected to a kangaroo court. She was driven out of office by virtue of the various allegations made against her at a time when she had no way of in any way responding that would be believed. Because people were saying, "We don't believe you." Well, that's an extraordinary thing to do in a situation where people are in a quasi-judicial situation. The next thing is the big casualty there was the truth. And everybody was talking about the issues that were coming down the track, the leaks that were coming down more and more convincing on a daily basis, the cross-questioning of the witness before the committee, cross-questioning in the true form of McCarthyism, where the witness was questioned again and again and again to confuse them and to ask them whether they remembered a specific instance on a specific day and conversation with various people. I have to say this: I hope that the people who were responsible at that situation and at that time will apologise to Noreen O'Sullivan for the injustice done to her, because I have never seen in my time in this House any public official drummed from office in that fashion. It is a sad, sad reflection on our society. It's a sad, sad reflection on this House that we allowed that to happen, and I sincerely hope that it doesn't happen again, because if it does, we will have a situation where nobody will want to take up the position in public office, such as the one that she held. So I remember deliberately going over to public accounts on one day, and incidentally, that is an issue that public accounts have no function in whatsoever. The Public Accounts Committee have no function in other than the financial issues in dealing with the Controller and Auditor General's report and making the decision and making a note on. They have no function so far as inquiries are concerned. There was one inquiry, that was the dirt inquiry, that was specifically legislated for, and it worked. Now, mind you, those of us who participated in it weren't very well rewarded in the subsequent elections, so much for that, Alaska Corla. So I have to say that I was appalled at the time at the way that that business was conducted, and I sincerely hope that there will be corrective action. The other thing I think is that we must remember, in all situations of this nature, two things must prevail: due process and natural justice. Everybody has the right to their good name. Everybody has the right to be believed. Everybody has the right to state their case. Everybody has the right to continue to maintain their position without being ridiculed, without being confused, and be given a fair hearing. Now, in this particular situation, nobody was accused of any undoing other than by stealth and by speculation and by innuendo and by allegations that were not substantiated. Eventually, a situation came where it came to a head, and the Commissioner decided to call it a day. Sad, sad time. We then go on to the whole question of natural justice. In my time on public accounts, we were always warned, A, to ensure that we observe these principles, and 2, that we avoided becoming involved in policy. Whatever the policy was in relation to any particular department, the committee had no function and still have no function in that area, and they should not have a function in that area, because that would constitute the setting up of a second government. That doesn't happen, and that cannot happen. We also had the situation where we had leaks virtually every two or three times per day, each link more incriminating than the one before. It now transpires, thanks to Charleton, that these leaks were incorrect, they were misleading, they were wrong, they were false. There were allegations sent to do a particular job, to do down a public official. And I would be one of the first people to say that we should always question public officials and do so forensically. But we just have to have respect for them, for the role that they have in society, for the role they have in the public service here, and for their role, and they need to be accountable at all times. I want to then turn, if I might, to the then Minister for Justice, Francis Fitzgerald, who likewise was drummed from office by a kangaroo court. A kangaroo court, first of public accounts, and then by this House itself. And we were all here at the time. And every effort was being made to undermine the then Taoiseach, to undermine her in the carrying out of her job, and to lay allegations that didn't stand up. And she is now vindicated. But I wonder who's going to apologise to her now, or to Noreen O'Sullivan. Nobody. Because it was done in the interests of society. It wasn't Alaska and Corla. It was done in the interest of the pursuit of politics. And people have said afterwards, that's politics. Well, it's not. And it never was Alaska and Corla. There was a code of honour in this House once upon a time where everybody tried to do the best they could and to try to ensure that they didn't offend their neighbour and they didn't offend their opponent, and they stood up to doing the best they could for society and for the House, for Parliament at any given time. And that worked. Sadly, that has been laid to rest. And I don't propose to go through the various quotations of the various people in this House and outside it during that period. But suffice it to say that we were treated on a daily basis to the information that was about to be disclosed. This is the secret information that nobody knew about. And there was going to have to be a serious problem. The Minister would have to resign. Serious problem. So, another kangaroo court, Chairman. Sad reflection on society. Sad reflection on this House. A sad reflection on our time, our so-called enlightened time. But it was also a sad reflection on the way we now purport to accept the role that women play in our society. It was an era that we were better off to forget. Because at that particular time, women were being persistently pursued by the system that applies in this House and around it. And it was, without a shadow of doubt, it was an anti-woman campaign. Anti-woman campaign in relation to the Garda Síochána, in relation to the then Commissioner Noreen O'Sullivan. Anti-woman campaign in relation to the Minister for Justice and the Taoiseach at the time. Anti-woman campaign with the movements at the time in relation to the Attorney General. The list goes on. So I would have to say, Alaska and Corla, I remember every moment of that. And I have a number of quotations here that I could easily go through if I want to. I don't want to do other than to remind the people who spoke at that time, to remind them that they do owe the then Minister for Justice an apology. She was seriously damaged by innuendo, by suspicion, by undermining her in the same way that the McCarthyism succeeded in the United States all those years ago. I feel ashamed, Alaska and Corla, when I think about the way those women were treated. I think we should offer an apology on behalf of the House to them, at least to give an indication that we, as politicians in this House, don't stand for that kind of thing, and will not stand for that kind of thing. And we wouldn't stand for it in any event, in respect of any member of the House, man or woman. So, in conclusion, can I just say this? I hope that this is the last episode we see of this kind of political assassination. I remember at the time doing interviews, and I remember at the time when asked about the thing so far as the Minister for Justice was concerned, and I stand over it still. I said at the time that she refused to do what she shouldn't do, and she was vindicated, and she didn't. I think we now wait for those who made all the allegations to come forward and make their apologies.
I would ask you